So today we're here to talk a little bit more about how new mobility devices like Gita are going to change the way that you move. Not in 20 years, but today. But first, let's take a trip down memory lane. So in 2015, the Piaggio Group, a 134-year-old transportation giant, best known for the iconic Vespa scooter, started looking at how people were moving around the world, or really how they weren't moving. They noticed that cities were completely choked by traffic, that our quality of life had deteriorated, that we exercise less to do basic tasks, and that it takes longer to go 1 mile in an automobile today than it did in a horse and buggy in 1920. So, moreover, they started to think about all of the converging macro trends that were happening. And they noticed that it was really the start of the fourth industrial revolution, and that major advancements being made in data and in infrastructure and in cyber systems were going to usher in a new era of mobility. And so they started to ask themselves, I think the city is going to look different. We have a long history of building planes and ships and 2- and 3-wheeled vehicles for the masses for 134 years. And our bet is that the future city is in fact pedestrian-centric, that it is rooted in that same DNA that spawned the Vespa, something that brought lightweight mobility to the masses for everyone from young girls in dresses to grandparents with their fruit baskets heading into the tight spaces of medieval cities. So they asked themselves, how do I put the human back at the center of the equation? How do we actually make humans move better, faster, further, and more efficiently in 21st century cities? Not on bone-crushing mechanical beasts, but on their own 2 feet. So our quality of life increases, so we move more, because sitting is the new smoking. With that in mind, in 2015, we launched Piaggio Fast Forward to create a family of products that were between the size of an aerial drone and a microcar, a completely new fleet of products that were in service to humans, not moving for them or instead of them, not to replace them, but to move with them. And so the same way that the Vespa brought lightweight mobility to the masses in post-war Europe, PFF aims to bring lightweight mobility to the masses for people in 21st century cities. So when we first started, we spent the first couple months looking at a lot of the mobility challenges that exist today. We actually were observing, spending thousands of hours seeing how people were moved. And we noticed everything from, one, women weren't using as many bikes because it turns out they didn't like to lock them. That you needed to create more cargo bay in everything that you were creating because people were holding so much more than they used to hold. And that the idea that women couldn't even find a vehicle that they could wear heels and a dress in other than an automobile or public transport. And so with that in mind and our own vision for the city, we started concepting designs. For several months, we did over 100 design ideas. What could that new mobility device look like that actually moved humans, that moved their goods? And we designed everything from a female-centric vehicle that allowed me to wear the outfit I'm wearing today to what we landed on, which was Gita. So meet Gita. Gita is a personal mobile carrier that follows you on the go, holding up to 45 pounds in tow. It goes indoors and outside. It goes up and down ADA-compliant ramps, and pretty much follows you like an obedient pet. Or at least I take about as many pictures of it and post about it as though it's my pet. So in order to use Gita, you stand in front of the device, and the first thing you do is put your stuff inside. So there's a little tap button on the screen. You can open it up, and inside it holds 45 pounds. Now you can't see what's inside of this, but it holds 2 full grocery bags or 18 bottles of wine, whatever your unit of metric of measurement is. And then you simply stand in front of it, tap one device, and then it will actually sync to you. And it's visually tracking you, so these are actually all camera systems on all sides. So it has obstacle detection and avoidance so that it knows where you're going and what you're doing. And then on the back, actually, it allows you to move it if you want to emergency stop where it's going. And if I kind of press it, it actually still just stays in place. Sorry. So let's take a walk, Gita. So what you're seeing on the screen is our original concept phase to where we landed today, which is the working prototype. So it took us about 1.5 years to go from concept into development, and here it is today. So by removing the trunk from the actual car itself, we enabled a way for you to be able to move hands-free through the world to do basic tasks. So whether you're going to the grocery store or the farmer's market, it allows anyone from an elderly person with arthritis to a young kid to be able to go from point A to point B, walking, scooting, skating their way through life without grabbing for the car keys. Now, autonomous cars are years away from really truly being prolific in society. But something like Gita is here now. In fact, it's going to be on the market in early 2019. So the question is, where are you going to see it? We've been testing it everywhere from Los Angeles with veterans to Miami with children, grandparents, and the likes. And so where you can expect to see it is in places that have large-sized walking communities where residential and retail are close to one another. So for example, we've been testing in Santa Monica for a while. And what's great about that location is that people walk to do their errands, they walk to the promenade, they go to the grocery store, and we envision Gita as a shared system. So while Gita can go for hours per day, in fact, most people don't use it for that long. The average trip that we take is 2 miles round trip. But if you took every car off the road today that was doing a 2-mile trip and you allowed somebody to use a Gita instead, imagine the reduction in congestion. So that's where you can expect to see it. We do envision it to be a shared system. So you can imagine here, it's either one per multi-generational family, or if you live in a doorman building, a retirement community, anywhere else, you can expect that they may have a fleet of Gitas in tow that would allow you to rent any of them, go out, it's usable as an amenity, and you return it when you come back. Now, as we've been out there testing, one of the most critical things that we have to think about is, one, how do we not create new infrastructure? How do we not burden what's out there? And how do we actually let people know what it is that we're doing? So as we've been testing the last 8 months or so, 3 key components have come to mind as we've been working a lot with city officials. So Gita actually doesn't require any new infrastructure. It goes on sidewalks. Occasionally it goes in your home, but most of the time it's just moving an outdoor space the same place as you are. Second thing is it doesn't require any new charging beds. So the back port has a little port that you can plug into any wall outlet. So whether you want to take it and you go to the store and you park it outside, it is able to securely lock and you can leave it there, or you can take it in with you. I occasionally do take it into the grocery store, put all my stuff in, check it at the counter, and then walk myself home. And Gita's in tow. And so one of the biggest things that we also have to think about is creating a lot of security and transparency that's being able to be shown to people out in the real world. So Gita's very cute. The number one thing that people say to us is, it's so cute, which is great, because what it actually means is that people walk up to us and they ask us, what is this? How can it help my life? What does it do? Instead of being absolutely scared of the machine that's just rolling like a ball down the sidewalk. And so there are a couple key features that we have here that we consistently are beta testing to let other people know what it is that Gita's communicating. So for the lights, for instance, they change colors based on the state that they're in, which is really important because if you don't know what Gita's doing and you just see it moving, unlike a car that has a turn signal, how are you supposed to know if it's going to speed up, slow down, turn right, turn left, or do any number of things? So we focus a lot on creating, instead of making it talk, creating ambient kind of behind-the-scenes noise and light that helps you understand what it is that it's communicating, whether idle or not. We just had our first bill passed in Florida, which is the first mobile carrier bill in the country that allows for Gita to be able to test in Florida. We're replicating this in several other states. Importantly, what's nice about this bill and what does kind of help us stand out is that they're not regulating this thing like they're regulating everything else. Unfortunately, if we get treated like a car or an aerial drone or anything else, it's actually detrimental for all of the new mobility devices that are coming to market today. Because part of the problem that you'll see is you can't treat this like everything else. It's not the same thing. And there's about 100 new products under development that similarly shouldn't be treated exactly like what already exists today. So we are one piece of a much larger equation that's actually happening in transportation. So what I wanted to leave you with today is what's sort of happening with the future and several predictions for what's actually going to happen. So the first is that what you'll see more of in the next 10 years will actually be related to lightweight transportation. So we've seen lots of advancements happening in autonomous cars, but the truth is, in many cities today, public transport is still the #1 thing that is actually getting people around with high enough throughput. Beyond that, you'll start to see the introduction of more scooters. If you've ever seen those little birds going around or the Lime bike that was just here, you'll start to see more shared ecosystems of lightweight mobility that allow you to go around. Gita's ready to take a walk. So the second thing that you'll see is multimodal transportation, meaning that many of these devices will work together. So we spend a lot of time thinking about, well, if you're going to take a Gita, why not have Gita follow you on your little scooter or on something else so that you can have devices work together? As information flow actually increases, you'll start to see apps that allow you to figure out where you're going. So you could tell it, hey, I'm going this far, I'm carrying this much. And it'll tell you, you should actually walk to where you're going and have a Gita. Or you should bike to here and then pick up a Gita and go somewhere. Or take these 5 different ways to actually get from point A to point B. The smart city of tomorrow is a lot more than just vehicle-to-vehicle communication and smart lights. It also is the involvement of all of these networks actually talking to each other. So the way this works, and the only way that we sort of actually reduce congestion, is to be able to have all of these devices interconnected and talking to one another. So a big priority of ours, as well as I think a lot of new mobility companies today, is how do we share data, how do we work together, how do we create an open system. And lastly, machines will come and go. But humans are sort of here to stay. The future city very much is pedestrian-centric, where work, life, and play are all near each other. And autonomous cars are coming. Whatever theory you've heard around how many years they are away, please feel free to double it, possibly triple it, before it's actually prolific anywhere in our society. And even once we get there, it will actually be much worse before it gets better. The number of car sales has in fact risen. It's because of a lot of the ride-hailing services. We are still, most of the time, only one person to a car. And so before it gets better, we won't have car ownership in 30 years. It will be a completely shared system. But long before we get there, it'll get a little bit worse, and then eventually we'll get to a point where many of these systems are working together, and the network and efficiencies that we create allow us to much more swiftly move from point A to point B. Thank you.